Welcome back to Sure Action's audio-visual series of the Pulsar Installation Manual. The previous segment explained how to bottom mount the Pulsar. This segment will explain the side mounting technique. Once again, we cannot stress enough the importance of correctly mixing the epoxy and mounting the sensor. This is the key to a long-lasting, trouble-free system. The alternative to the bottom mount is the side mount. This refers to removing one of the tabs of the sensor and placing the sensor on the side of the joist flush along the bottom edge. This position is slightly less sensitive than the bottom mount and is most commonly used when drywall is to be installed. Side mounting applies to all solid joists. If installing on an open web steel truss, a parallel cord wood truss, or a TGI, the Pulsar will not be mounted on the side. It will instead be mounted on the top side of the bottom rail. For open web and parallel cord trusses, the sensor will be mounted on the top side of the bottom rail, nestled in the crevice where the V points down. On a TGI, the sensor will be placed on the top lip of the bottom rail. One or both of the tabs on the sensor can be removed if necessary. Shown here are all the possible tools you may need for a successful installation. We have a short piece of poplar to simulate a joist, a pulsar, in this case a high-performance pulsar as identified by two white wires, gel-filled crimps, a mixing stick, an epoxy pack, a pair of cutters, a means of opening the epoxy, and a heat gun. The only time a heat gun is required is when you must first warm cold steel before mounting the sensor in an unheated environment. The only difference between bottom mounting and side mounting is the physical location of the sensor and the removal of one or both of the sensor's tabs. Using the cutters, remove the tab from the sensor. This is usually the tab opposite the wires. Fold the epoxy pack in half, snip off the end, and squeeze both halves out onto a non-porous surface. Each half is a different color. Using the stirring stick, mix the epoxy for 15 to 30 seconds until it is a uniform white color. Spread all the epoxy across the entire substrate of the sensor. Include any tabs that have not been removed. Gently touch the center to the side of the joist, flush along the bottom edge, making sure you don't squeeze out all the epoxy. Again, this is not like bonding two pieces of wood together. You do not want to clamp the center too tightly. Yet you do want there to be a nice layer of epoxy to bond the center to the joist. Use a couple of pieces of tape to hold the center in place while the epoxy cures. The tape can either be left or removed later. It will have no bearing on the performance of the sensor. This epoxy has a 5-minute work time, so the sensor must be mounted within this time frame. Depending on temperature, the epoxy should be fully cured in 24 hours. However, it should be hard enough for you to accurately walk test the system after 4 hours. Movement on the floor above will not affect the curing process. After viewing this segment and the previous segment, you now know how to correctly mix the epoxy and mount the sensor. The next segment will provide you with general installation tips and hints. Thank you for watching.